Hello, my name is Michael Sergeyev. My students call me Professor Misha. I teach various courses at the University of the Arts, mostly in religion and philosophy. I teach world religions, apocalypse, holy war, and afterlife. Today's lecture is one of the lectures in my course on the apocalypse. Today's lecture will be about the book of Revelation, which is the foundational book for the course and the last book in the Bible. Who was the author of the book of Revelation? According to Christian tradition, it was John the Apostle who was the author of the book of Revelation. It was that John who was called John the Beloved, and who was a contemporary of Jesus, who was one of the 12 original apostles, who was preaching the teaching of Jesus, and for that he was exiled to the island of Patmos, which is nowadays in Greece. And it was on the island of Patmos, according to the Christian tradition, that John wrote this book, which is now known as the book of Revelation. So if you travel to Patmos nowadays, you will be shown the cave where John supposedly wrote this book. According to Christian scholars, the book of Revelation was written by the end of the 1st century. However, biblical scholars challenge the Christian tradition and believe that the book was written by someone else, maybe another John, or maybe another person who called himself John. Biblical scholars studied the text of Revelation and compared this text with the Gospel of John, also written by John the Apostle, and with several letters in the Bible that are attributed to John. And the scholars realize that the texts of those books do not match, and therefore, because of this linguistic and contextual analysis, they believe that the book of Revelation was written by someone else. But whoever that was, he was a prophetic figure who had a vision of the future of the world and the future of Christianity. And eventually, the book of Revelation made it to the biblical canon. From the beginning, the book of Revelation was a very controversial text. The reason why it was controversial is because the book portrays Jesus in a very violent way. In the Gospels, Jesus is portrayed as a human being and a divine being at the same time, who conquers death by love and by peace. Jesus never defended himself. He prohibited Peter from defending himself. He gave himself to be sentenced to crucifixion. So the life of Jesus was perfectly peaceful. It was the life of love and compassion. While the book of Revelation portrays a totally different Jesus who appears to John in his vision. The book of Revelation reads, in fact, like an American action movie, like a blockbuster. The book is filled with battles, heavenly battles, earthly battles. Angels fight and destroy everything on their way to save those who are deserved to be saved. And because of this violence, the book was considered very controversial. The book of Revelation was one of the last books to be included into the Bible, and there were other books that were competing with it. But finally, by the end of the 4th century, the book found its way into the biblical canon. But even after that, the book remained very controversial, and it was not included as part of the Christian service. It was not included as part of the Christian liturgy. Only since the 7th century, after the Christian Council in Toledo, the city nowadays in Spain, only after Christian Council in Toledo, the book of Revelation was included into the church services. Since the 7th century, parts of this book were read during the services, and the book was so controversial that some of the decisions of the Council of Toledo stated that whoever disagreed with this decision will be excommunicated. The book of Revelation excites our imagination because it contains so many mysterious symbols and numbers. The book of Revelation is based upon the number of 7. There are many sevens there, 7 plagues and 7 angels. The number 7 was considered to be a lucky number in the Old Testament. Now remember the 7 days of creation. On the 7th day God rested because creation was complete. So number 7 in the Jewish tradition meant completion, fulfillment, perfection, harmony. So therefore the book of Revelation gives us this end of the days, which is the fulfillment of God's promise to humanity, which is the completion of creation. Creation went from the beginning point to the end point. Then there are some interesting and mysterious creatures that are described on the pages of the book. We have the beasts, 4 beasts that are worshipping near the throne of the judge. We have another beast, 7-headed beast, or the dragon, that is pursuing its violent aims and wants to swallow the woman who is about to give birth to the child in chapter 12. This 7-headed dragon is also known under the number 666, probably the most famous number in the book of Revelation, the symbol of all evil, the number that received many interpretations by Christian theologians throughout the centuries. We also have the famous horsemen of the apocalypse, the 4 horsemen that reveal their plagues that they bring to humanity. We also have different kinds of angels, but these angels do not look like angels that we find nowadays on posters. These are not smiley angels who bring joy. These are the angels that bring destruction to everything they touch. There are many interesting symbols in the book of Revelation, but among all of the chapters, one chapter stands out, and this is chapter 20, which represents revelation par excellence. Among all the chapters of the book of Revelation, there is one which attracted special attention from the Christian thinkers, Christian theologians, and Christian philosophers. This is chapter 20. Chapter 20 describes the so-called millennium, 1,000 years of the reign of Christ and his saints. This idea of the future millennium received many commentaries from Christian theologians who were trying to figure out whether the millennium is in the past or whether the millennium will be in the future, or maybe we are living in the midst of this millennium. There are many interpretations of the millennium, but the chapter itself, no matter how you interpret it, deserves a special attention. So the chapter begins with the archangel Michael, the angel of the apocalypse, my favorite angel and my namesake, fighting the beast, the dragon. Remember that the book of Revelation is the only book in the Bible that paints the picture of this evil one, the evil one who is also the serpent in the story of the fall of Adam and Eve, who is the Satan who appears in the books of the Old Testament, who is the devil who appears in the book of Revelation. So the book of Revelation makes this gigantic evil figure who is the serpent, the Satan, the devil, and the dragon. And the archangel Michael is fighting this dragon and is victorious and is able to chain the dragon and put him into the pit for 1,000 years. That marks the beginning of the millennium, and that marks the so-called first resurrection of the dead. The first resurrection of the dead is the resurrection of those saints who died for their faith and who will reign with Christ during the millennium. After the millennium, which seems to be 1,000 years of prosperity and abundance and great life, some kind of a paradise, the paradise resurrected. After 1,000 years, the Satan, or the devil, as chapter 20 tells us, is let loose again for a while, and he gathers all of his forces from four corners of the earth for the final battle. This final battle is known in the Christian tradition as the Armageddon. So after this Armageddon, when the forces of heaven and hell collide and fight each other, the forces of heaven finally win. And as a result of this Armageddon, the forces of evil, headed by the devil and the false prophet, end up in hell, which is described in the book of Revelation as the lake of sulfur and fire. And then we are presented with the so-called final judgment, or the white throne judgment, when everybody is resurrected, and this is the second resurrection, and everybody appears before the judge, and the judge judges those people according to their deeds. And as a result of the judgment, those who are resurrected end up either in heaven or in hell. So that end of the 20th chapter, chapter 20 of the book of Revelation, represents basically an apocalypse in a nutshell. It gives us the framework of the whole event, the apocalypse, or the end of days, which begins with the temporal victory of the forces of goodness, and which ends with the final and complete victories of God and his angels. So that's why this chapter 20, is so important in the book. And this concludes my brief lecture on the book of Revelation that is part of my course on the Apocalypse. Again, my name is Michael Sergeyev. I teach at the University of the Arts. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for my future lectures from the same course. Thanks.